Hello, friends. Today I will tell you about the first season of the drama series 2008 year called Breaking Bad. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. The mobile home tries to escape from the chase and at some point flies into a ditch. A strange guy in underpants and a gas mask runs out of it, who seems to be shocked himself that all this is happening to him. This is not surprising, because the type, 50-year-old Walter White, a chemistry teacher and an exemplary family man who lives the most peaceful life, found himself in the middle of the desert in such a ridiculous situation. After hearing the police sirens, Walter takes the barrel and records messages to his family, after which he goes out on the road, not fully understanding what he was going to do. But for now, we need to go back 3 weeks ago. Walter's pregnant wife serves him a terribly healthy breakfast, vegetarian bacon and dietary supplements, which, according to the woman, should lower the whole family's cholesterol and add health. White himself is ready to put up with his wife's demands, but their son Walter Jr. is not going to eat this stuff, even despite his health difficulties. Walter lectures in high school, enthusiastically telling the children about chemical elements and reactions. After school, he takes a part-time job at an auto shop, trying to earn more money. And sometimes it comes to the point that Walter has to wash cars, which greatly amuses his ungrateful students. On this day, Walter is met at home by all his family and friends. It's his birthday, he turns 50, and despite his sad mood, everyone else considers it a big holiday that needs to be celebrated. As is usually the case with the Whites, the brother-in-law of the Hank family becomes the star of the party. A successful cop, not without pride, shows off his service weapon to Walter Jr. and poisons his stories about cool operations and catching dealers. The Shredder even includes a news release in which a close-up shows the police loot. As a joke, Hank offers Walter to go on a case with him sometime, but he just shrugs it off. Once in the bedroom together, Walter and his wife are already discussing household matters out of habit, simultaneously trying to fulfill their marital duty. It looks sad, but given the length of life together, you can't wait for more. The next day is no different from hundreds of others, but Walter suddenly faints at work. An ambulance takes him away, but all he cares about is cheap insurance, which will not cover treatment in case of anything. The examination shows that White has lung cancer. Listening to the doctor, who describes the situation to him, mentioning that it is impossible to operate in this case and you can only last a couple of years on chemotherapy, Walter thinks only about one thing, and the drops of mustard that froze on the dressing gown yesterday. Walter doesn't tell his wife anything, having indifferently condemned the credit card with her, and in the morning he goes to work as usual, without telling anyone anything. Only now the nerves are giving up. On the next boss's command to wash the car, White smashes the store and sends the boss. At night, Walter can't sleep, and not waiting for morning, he calls Hank to say that he agrees to go with him on some assignment. The opportunity comes quickly. The very next day, he and the cops are guarding the house where the dealers cook. A group of hijackers in gas masks storms the hangout, and he is given to take one. Hank and his partner leave Walter while they check out the house, and at this time the old man sees his former student Jesse Pinkman getting out of the next apartment. The guy notices the teacher, but White lets him leave quietly without telling the cops. After finding out Pinkman's address in the school archive, Walter comes to his house and asks him to take him into business. The guy has experience, connections and sales channels, and the old chemist is very good at science and will be able to make such sugar, which no one has ever sold nearby. Wrapping up the next batch of things for sale, Skylar discusses with her sister Marie her book with stories and bed relations with her husband, who is just at this time typing in the school laboratory everything he might need for cooking. Such a serious approach annoys his young accomplice, the captain cook, but he has no choice. Walter promised to turn him in to the cops if he didn't take him on the team. Jesse also sets his own conditions. No cooking in his house. After considering all the options, the men decide that they need a mobile home, so they can go far away and not be burned in the city. Walter withdraws all his savings to buy a trailer, but despite Jesse's questions, he does not explain to him why such sacrifices are made. He gives his new friend an envelope with savings and returns to his family. The White family comes to the clothing store to buy their son new jeans. But the mood is spoiled by the company of tight teenagers who think that a guy's disability is ridiculous. Walter tries to keep himself in control for a while, but then, freaking out, he comes back and snaps the most important thing. A few days later, everything is ready, and the chefs arrive in the desert to start cooking. Even here, Walter is very pedantic. He takes off all his clothes so that in no case does he bring home the smell. Cooking is in full swing in compliance with all the norms and stages of purification, and finally, the chemist turns out sugar, which impresses the experienced Jesse with its purity. The guy is eager to try, but the teacher forbids him to do it, having agreed that they only trade. Jesse comes to Crazy's dealer to offer him a cool product, and such sugar really interests him. Only here's the bad luck, he's not going to buy it. It's easier for him to survive at the teacher's recipe and cook himself. The car with the guests catches Walter by surprise, but it immediately becomes clear to him that the guys did not come for the sake of empty chatter. In order to somehow save himself and his young friend, the chemist pretends that he agrees to show the recipe, and invites dealers to the trailer. When the gangsters lose their vigilance, White arranges an explosion and runs out into the street, closing the door tightly behind him. The teacher knows for sure that sugar pores act within a few seconds, and soon there will be no raiders. A wild cough subsides in the trailer and Walter, quickly picking up the injured Jesse, pulls a gas mask on him and himself and leaves, because the grass around the trailer has caught fire and someone will come here very soon. And now the story goes back to the very beginning. Speeding up on the road, White flies into a ditch. He hears the siren and prepares to meet the cops. At first, the old man plans to shoot back, then decides to eliminate himself, but after a few seconds he realizes that the siren was not from police cars, but from firefighters who flew by and did not even pay attention to the weirdo in underpants. Now the partners can only cover their tracks, well, and calm down so that Skylar does not guess that her husband got into trouble. And then that night Walter surprised his wife very much, after which he went to the bathroom to recover a little. But 12 hours ago, the old man was still standing with his friend in the desert, at a house on wheels that had gone off the road and in which 2 deceased gangsters were lying. The easiest thing was to get the car out. A few bucks and a local Indian tractor driver solved this issue. But with the bodies, everything is much more complicated, and Walter suggests leaving this issue until the morning, promising himself that as soon as he and Jesse do everything, their paths will part forever. And it seems that everything is solved, there is very little left and everything will end. But at this moment, one of the victims coughs from behind. Coming home after all this, Walt decided to surprise his wife, eventually ending up on the bathroom floor. At breakfast, he tries to behave as if nothing had happened, but his too active chatter and the more strange call from the company's phone alarm scaler. The woman does not ask unnecessary questions, but as soon as Walter leaves, she calls back to the number from which they just called, and hears a funny greeting from the captain cook there. It turned out that it was Jesse who called. Lessons on this day seem very long, and the teacher hears all the time that someone is asking him about the corpses. After waiting until it is finally possible to leave, White collects several cans of acid in his laboratory and goes to a friend. At the same time, Jesse sees that one of the van's guests has disappeared, and he is not even near the house. This is not surprising, because Walter meets Crazy a few blocks away, and he has to take risks to get him back to his place. Skylar enters the caller's number into the database and gets to the Captain Cook's page. What the woman sees shocks her, but she does not understand how it can be related to her husband. In order not to take risks, the accomplices fasten the guy in the garage with the help of a moped lock. Walter tries to figure out what to do with the survivor, but it becomes clear that under no circumstances can he be released. In addition, a second one is waiting for them in the car, which is about to start smelling so that the neighbors will certainly find out about everything. Walter offers to toss a coin, someone deals with the body issue, and someone ends up torturing Crazy, and that's exactly what falls to him. The chemist sends Jesse to the construction store and explains in detail what kind of container you need to buy to dissolve with acid. The guy even tries on basins, trying to find one that is comfortable in it. At this time, White gathers his strength to end the Crazy, but instead he again sympathizes with the dealer and takes him a couple of sandwiches, water and a bucket for needs. Going up to the kitchen, the old man notices scattered grass on the table and, deciding that he has nothing to lose anyway, he rolls himself a cigarette to have a little fun and gain courage before returning to the basement. Jesse returns home empty-handed. He hasn't found a convenient basin, but he can't really charge him for it. He still hasn't coped with Crazy himself. But all this is fading into the background for now. The old man still needs to go to the hospital to go with the scaler for an ultrasound. The Whites learn that they will have a daughter, and Walter barely manages to hold back tears, realizing that he will not be able to raise her. Fortunately, Scalar changes the subject. She demands to tell her the truth, who the man is Jesse Pinkman, and the old man has to say that this is his supplier of grass. While the chemist is trying to teach a lesson, Jesse is trying to solve the problem with the body, which, by the way, is already covered with flies. The guy pulls the package out of the bus, when suddenly Skylar comes to the gate. The woman does not notice the strange package, but this does not frighten the guy any less, although it turns out that she came just to tell the cook to never sell grass to her husband again. It takes Jesse several hours to lift the body to the second floor, but finally the stairs are behind. The guy does not understand at all what all these searches for a basin were for, because he has a beautiful bath, where he puts a former accomplice and a weapon that needs to be disposed of. When the old man returns, Jesse first tells about the visit of the scaler, mentioning how hard it was for him to lift the body into the bath. Hearing this, Walter changes his face and it's clearly not his wife who scares him. The chemist leads the guy into a room under the bathroom, from where red acid is already dripping, and a minute later the bath itself falls out, or rather its remains, along with the remains of the loser. And all because this acid corrodes almost everything except a certain composition of plastic. At the same time, 2 Indian kids run out in the desert with a sword, and a local girl notices a gas mask. Walter and Jesse have to clean up the pigsty, which happened after a corroded bath. Collecting the scraps, the old man remembers how he and his girlfriend discussed the chemical composition of the human body in their youth. A pregnant wife is finishing repairs in the nursery at this time, and she decides to carefully ask an experienced sister what a person who uses grass looks like. Marie is sure that it's about Walter Jr., although Skylar tells her that she needs it for a new book. After finishing with the cleaning, the cooks hose each other down, and to relieve stress, Jesse decides to use some sugar while the old man cleans up after the prisoner in the basement. Crazy demands from his captor to explain himself and decide something, either to finish him off or to let him go. Well, the second is unlikely, because the prisoner knows everything about Walter, his name, place of work, and even that his son is disabled, and Jesse told him about it. White has to blame his partner for being so talkative and for breaking the rules and taking sugar. There is a fight between men, but it does not lead to anything. Jesse leaves with the package, reminding the old man that his part of the deal is waiting in the basement. Choosing her shoes, Marie calls her husband Hank and asks to talk to Walter Jr., who, in her opinion, has started to indulge in grass. While the girl is talking on the phone, she notices that the saleswoman has moved away, and using this Marie leaves in new shoes. In the evening, Hank brings his nephews to the ghetto and introduces him to all the delights of dependent life. While the cop brings the local beauties to the conversation, a terrified Jesse is watching what is happening from the window. Walter makes a list of pros and cons, which should help him make a decision, and to finally decide, the old man calls home just to hear his wife's voice. However, White does not hear exactly what he wanted. Skylar asks him not to come back after another lie. After making a sandwich for the prisoner, Walter goes down to his basement, but does not have time to reach it. A coughing fit causes him to lose consciousness for a few minutes. After recovering and collecting all the pieces, he goes back up to redo a snack for the guy. Grabbing a can of beer, Walter lingers near the guy and tries to get to know him better. He also tells about himself honestly. Having discovered the main secret about his illness, Crazy manages to find words to ingratiate himself with the old man. He talks about his childhood and the furniture store that his father runs. This helps Walter make a final decision, and he goes upstairs to get the key, taking a promise from the guy not to take revenge and not to hand him over to the cops. Walter goes upstairs and, having finished his beer, is about to release the guy, but, throwing out an empty can, the old man stops. After pulling out all the pieces of broken equipment from the trash, the chemist realizes that one of the biggest pieces is missing. When White returns to the basement, Crazy is still hoping to get free, but the chemist does not want to delay for a long time and, asking the guy to turn around, says that he knows about the fragment. Crazy doesn't have time to fight back. Returning home, Jesse finds a clean van in the same order in the basement. Walter does not go to work, and while he is somewhere reviving himself, a team of cops arrives at the scene of a recent fire and inspects the gangster's abandoned car. When he gets to the hiding place, Hank finds a bag of sugar and is surprised at its quality. He had never seen such a thing before. Standing on the bridge, Walter again recalls a conversation with a girl about whether people have a soul or they consist only of chemical elements. After thinking a little about what happened, Walter arrives home and announces to his wife that they need to talk. Friends, the sequel is now in front of you on the screen.